yeah, so without sort of further delay, let me sort of start talking about cognitive traps and how to avoid building them while building products. So the first question, obviously that comes to your mind is, what's a cognitive trap? I'm sure you would have heard about a cognitive bias. Cognitive trap is something similar. I mean, it is, I think, best. I mean, if I were to define it, I would say cognitive trap is a systematic error in perception due to the environment that one is embedded into. So, so think of it this way, right? I mean, uh, you are embedded in a particular environment, and intelligence. I mean, sometimes we feel that intelligence will help us do the right actions, pick out the right choices, and so on and so forth. But if your environment is structured in a specific way, you are limited in your behavioral repository on how to act based on just that environment. So whatever errors you may end up making, they're not errors in the classical sense that you made a mistake, but those are errors in the sense of that these are systematic. These are predictable errors because of the environment that you're embedded into. I was talking about systematic error not being, and this is really like contextualization of cognitive trap. So cognitive trap is the errors that you do because of the environment you're embedded into. And so these are not errors in the classical sense of that you say 2 plus 2 is 5. Those are obvious errors. These are the errors which you would expect anyone in your position to do because the environment around yourself makes you do those errors. And I was just talking about this simple example to contextualize that definition. So I'm sure all of you on the call would know that for the longest of times, all humans believed that Earth was at the center of the universe, and that all the planets, sun, moon, everything else revolve around the Earth. Uh, because that's what we saw when we looked up in the sky. Even today, if you aren't taught that Earth is actually not the center of the universe, and anyone would tend to believe that sun revolves around the earth and moon revolves around the earth. So again, like I was saying, this is a very predictable and systematic error because the perception fools us into thinking that everything else is revolving around earth, while it's actually not that case in the truth. So it's important to differentiate, and that's what I'm alluding to, that cognitive trap is something which is very hard to see beyond, and intelligence has actually very little to do with it. In fact, if you're more intelligent, you get to start justifying your beliefs due to environment as your own conscious choices. So cognitive traps are actually systematic biases that are very, very hard to get sort of beyond. And similarly, another example, I'm sure for those of you who would have read Nassim Taleb's Fooled by Randomness, and I guess this is a classic example. That book just made it popular. If you are a chicken, imagine, you are a chicken who's getting fed every single day. You'll get to, I mean, you'll feel happy about this, right? There's someone who's taking care of you. There is someone who's very nice to you. Someone is just feeding you every day. And your happiness and trust in that person will keep on increasing over a period of time until, one fine day, it's the slaughter day. And so ironically, a chicken is happiest just before it gets slaughtered, because every day a kind-hearted person feeds it free food. So again, this is a cognitive trap. This is a bias wherein because of this repeated exposure to a happy event, you tend to form certain beliefs which are not embedded in reality, which are not true beliefs. So I think the crux of it, and you'll get to see in a moment how it's related to building products. The crux of it is really about uh, how our immediate environment shapes our reality, right? It's this simple idea that leads slowly to all kinds of biases that come into building products. What as product managers, product entrepreneurs, startup founders, we see around ourselves is the sort of belief we end up uh, embedding within ourselves, whether it's true or not true. So in this cartoon, you see someone who's really wanting a helping hand and feels relieved that he's seen a boat. And the same thing happens with the person who's on the boat who feels relieved they've seen the land, when in reality, both are screwed in that sense. All right. So again, like I was saying, uh, uh, connecting this cognitive trap to or cognitive bias to product manager. So product manager, like product manager obviously is a human, and a product manager's reality is shaped by her environment. And what is product manager's environment? So on the left, you can see all the entities that shape up the product manager's reality. So there are customers with their requests, their feedback, their usage, their non-usage, then their competitors and markets. When a new launch happens or when some new trend comes along, then there are engineers, what they tell product managers, what technology is interesting, what's not interesting, what is boring, what's not boring. And then there are designers who have their own opinion on the style and so on and so forth. And finally, of course, it's product manager's manager and their style. And lastly, the CEO, their hopes, expectation, vision. So all these entities shape up the environment of the product manager. And so on the right, you will see that even though if you go and ask a product manager, what's your explicit goal? The explicit goal, I'm hoping the product manager will answer that my goal is to own and deliver the best product to the customers. But because of the complex environment that gets shaped up through the entities on the left, like customers, engineers, designers, there's all sorts of these sometimes secondary and sometimes they become primary implicit goals of a product manager. For example, the implicit goal is getting a high appraisal in yearly reviews. Implicit goal is to stay busy in the organization, and then the goal is to do things that articles on Medium say that a product managers do. Also, not to spoil relationship with coworkers, and then finally have this sense of exerting control on the world by influencing the product direction towards personal taste, because all of us have our personal taste. So the gist is that even though the explicit goal is that you need to deliver the best product, but all these forces they start shaping up behavior so that this explicit goal slowly starts disappearing and degrading. Because then from a moment to moment perspective, depending on what organization you're embedded in and what your own personal nature is, you'll start chasing these implicit goals rather than explicit goals. And obviously a lot of times these implicit goals will be in conflict with explicit goals. So, so yeah, it's just that this again cartoon shows how complex motivations can become when we're embedded in such a rich context. So, just thinking that product manager's job is simple, I think that's not the case. Uh, there is a lot of these complex forces that are shaping your day-to-day choices on what to build in the product and what to actually do in your job. And it's important to sort of just take an honest reflection of what your motivations are actually, and if they are related to building the best product for the customers.